Um, I also feel like we're really bad about asking this question, but like, why are we here today? Like, what are we hoping to learn or gain from today?
New tips and tricks for listing appointments.
Cool. Love that. Thank you.
Confident.
Same. When I first got to EXP, Anna introduced me to Phone Warriors, and I've never really met Emily, but I've observed, and saw, where she started and what Tina has posted about. So I'm very just want to see how they do things up in Raleigh.
Yeah, Blake, me too. I'm a total fangirl. I mean, I love Ashley too. Ashley, you're amazing. Like, but I'm gonna say something. Emily, when she talks and she talks listings, I'm like, girl, what? Teach me your ways. What is this? How do you do this? Like, it is like a thing. Is it just confidence? What is it?
Yeah, no, I think everything I've learned, and I tell Tina this every day, is from her. So I think Ashley probably agrees too.
She's basically a mini Tina. She just kind of took over. Tina went out and then Emily just kind of flowed. They have this similar personality. Nothing really shakes them. They're very even toned. They're very, very similar.
Emily, what's your working
You
opinion?
know she's more fun than Emily.
What'd you say?
I said, what's your working genius?
Oh, sorry. I'll shut up.
What was the question? I'm sorry.
What's your working genius?
I am a TD.
Good. So a lot of discernment and that tenacity. You just get the job done and you just have that list and you're going to execute it and you're going to go through it and make it happen.
Yeah. Tina thinks I'm a TW, but I think I'm a TD.
Yeah. Maybe the W comes from Ashley and being around Ashley a lot. So you're just like, you're absorbing a little bit of her wonder.
It doesn't. Yeah, right.
Okay, well, we've got some people popping on and we want to make sure that we're conscientious of everybody's time. So if you two can kind of introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about like what your business looks like and then take it away.
Ashley, you want to
go? You can go for it.
Responding to text messages.
I was balancing my phone.
I have had my license now, sounds like a long time, 11 years, I think. I started in new home sales. I lived in Charlotte and then moved back to Raleigh, where I'm from, in 2017. And that's when I joined Tina when we were with KW. And so I've been with her ever since. So this past year, I sold close to 70 homes, which was around 37-ish million in volume. And majority of them, I think I took over 30, or no, I'm lying, maybe 25 were expireds. I'd say about 60% of my business right now is listings and then 40 is buyers. So.
And I have now been on the team 9 years. I was a transaction coordinator for 4.5 years. So I managed about 120 deals a year on the back end, negotiating repairs, appraisals, like they dropped it at the desk and I pretty much did everything. And then right before COVID went into selling, and last year sold 46, closed and pending. 22 were listings. So I think I kind of started to shift more to the list side, have a lot of buyers, a lot of were buy sell. So just past clients and people from 2019, 2020 that were, came in through Zillow, realtor.com. I think a lot of those were reselling homes. So staying in touch with them and kind of, working on that relationship and just being front of mind for them. So yeah. And Emily was top 50 in the triangle, which is amazing, on a team this year out of probably at least 10,000 agents. So that was a big accomplishment for her. I think you were top 100 last year, so you moved it up. So I texted Emily last night. I'm like, you're going to do this with me tomorrow because everybody wants to hear how she does her listing appointments or what is she doing every day. So I've got some questions for her and I'll talk about, some of the appointments that I went on. I actually just went on a for sale by owner last night that our team set up for me. And I think just changing your mindset and coming from a different place of, I'm just going to go. And if these people are not interested in listing, like it's just going to make me better. So I really almost was like watching myself have this appointment to go, what questions do I need to ask better? How can I, like, what is their response to me? Just watching myself in their response, which was kind of fun because when you're not tied to the outcome, you can really learn things. So Emily, I think one of the things that we had talked about is you've had a lot of recent success. You have a ton of listings coming. And what do you feel the difference has been with those listings? I know one was 2 years ago, you had talked to them and a lot of people like that coming back for you.
Yeah. So honestly, it's all from prospecting when I look at my business. And a lot of it, majority of my success, I was telling an agent about this yesterday in the office. I was asking me about cold calling. A lot of my success comes from the follow-up. So I'm actually a better follow-up agent than I am actual outbound making the calls. Obviously, you have to make the outbound calls to do the follow-up, but most of my success comes from just that persistence of just continuing to just keep calling and being present. So when they're ready, the last man standing typically wins. Not to downplay myself, but what I've noticed, especially with expireds, is agents will make the calls maybe once, twice, three times, and then they forget about them. And then they just keep moving on to that low hanging fruit. For me, if I get them on the phone, I can get a good number for them in their email. They go and follow up boss, and they're going to always have an action plan. They're always going to have, they're going to have a reminder or something for me to contact them. So when I look at my business and I look at the listings that I have coming, I have 10 coming within the next 8 weeks. It's all majority of them are from follow-up. And I actually had 2 calls this past week from expireds that I spoke with last year. And they're like, hey, we get your texts and emails. Sorry, we haven't responded to you, but we're ready now. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'm ready too. So then I go out and I take the listing. So
what would you say your cadence is on those? And is that exactly where you're putting the task and follow-up boss? Is that where your reminders live, or do they live on, a hard book in front of you as well?
Yeah, so I do 2 things. So I keep them in follow-up boss, or any CRM works, doesn't have to be follow-up boss, obviously, but anything that has a constant reminder. So I have tasks list for the day. So there's probably 20 to 30 tasks, for me at least, in a given day. And then I also create on my desktop, I have folder buyers and sellers. And if I had a good conversation with someone, or I feel like they're going to transact within the next 6 months, I create a file for them, and then they go on my desktop in my little seller folder. So it's just front of mind. So, if it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm doing my follow-up, I might go through my seller folder, and I'll just kind of go through and say, okay, I'm going to actually, I know I reached out to them 2 weeks ago, I'm going to call them again. So there's no perfect formula for it, but as long as they're front of mind and they're in front of you, follow-up boss CRM is good, but then maybe having another system in place as well, whether it's a notebook or something on your desktop.
So good conversations, you're following up, every 2 weeks? Or
Yeah,
hitting
just
it harder up front?
Yeah, it really just depends. But when I'm following up, I'm not just saying, hey, this is Emily, I'm calling to follow up with you. It's like, okay, great. We don't need to talk to you. It's usually something of value. So if it's let's say, for example, Lockmere is a neighborhood near me, maybe it's an expired in Lockmere. And I spoke with them. They're like, we're not looking to sell for another 6 months, maybe a year, don't bother us. I might get their information, put it in follow-up us, and then one of my reach out plans may be sending them a quick CMA of what sold recently in Lockmere. Hey, I don't know if you're aware, but your neighbor just sold their home last week. It looks like it sold over listing price. You probably saw the sale, but just wanted to let you know. So I might send that in an email. So I try to figure out something of value or something of substance that's actually going to, be something other than just a, hey, are you ready to sell? So I'm always trying to think of, like, based on the conversation I had or based on their situation, what's something that I can bring to them that they would actually find helpful.
Yeah.
So
No, it's really good. And as far as I know, you used to be very regimented.
Person behind me as well.
Oh, whoops. So I know you used to be very regimented as far as, like, you'd be on the phones from 8 to 10, or, if you didn't get anyone, you'd follow back up at night. How do you feel that that's been? I know a lot of it's been people calling you or things that you had followed up on. So you're probably off that schedule a little bit, but what does that look like for you daily?
as far as my schedule, ask again, what do you ask?
Like, what does your schedule look like as far as phone calls? Like, are you still prospecting as heavy as you used to, or what's your plan for the day usually?
So ever since I had a baby in August, it's been a little bit unique of a schedule. So I'm doing more prospecting later in the day than I am in the morning. I used to start at 8 o'clock in the morning and I would go till 12, and I was very regimented with my schedule. Now it's kind of just finding at least 2 hours of my day when I can. So if it's happens to be 1 o'clock, it's 1 o'clock. If it's 6 o'clock, it's 6 o'clock. It's not as much in the morning anymore. But I at least try, I really do, try to at least knock out 2 hours of prospecting a day. And if I can get, for me, if I can get at least 10 contacts, that's my goal. So I just want to keep adding people to the pipeline, because I know, again, for me, my strength is my follow-ups. If I can just keep adding people to my database, I'm not sold on trying to convert them in the first call. I'm just going to keep following up with them. Obviously, the game is to try to convert them. If you have good, conversion skills, or if you're a top agent, you're probably going to be able to get some of those appointments from the first call. But what I find, at least for us in our market, it's the follow-up and just that consistent action. So like Ashley said earlier, I had a lady that called me about a month ago. It was a expired from 2022, $800,000 price point home. And I had just continued to call her. I sent her text emails. We had listed a home in her neighborhood. I told her about that property. And then out of the blue, she calls me and says, "Hey, you've been really persistent. I would love to hire you. I know you're going to work hard for me." So it was pretty much a one and done situation where I just showed up and signed the listing agreement. So that would be where I would focus my time and attention, is just in the follow-up. And then maybe it's not expireds, maybe it's FSBOs, maybe it's team leads that you're getting, but just continuing to love on those people is the name of the game.
Yeah, I think I get disenchanted very easily. I know myself. It's like, if it's not right now or I don't have someone answer, like it's just gone because there's too many things racing around in my head. But I think it's having those drip campaigns, having newsletters that we just started go out to people, just as creating some type of value and having you be a little bit of a top of mind. I try to text all my clients, send them something during the holidays, especially for past client referrals and things like that. So even if you had a good conversation with a expired or for sale by owner, sending them a $5 Starbucks gift card, like something that makes you memorable other than the people that are doing the same things.
Yeah. And real quick, what I notice is what's memorable when I'm actually on the call, when I'm talking to these people. I'm a really good listener, at least I think I am. And what I find is, and when I talk to my expireds and I say, "Well, why did you hire me?" or "What was the difference between me and someone else that you spoke with?" And no lie, majority of them say you actually listened. You didn't interrupt, and you actually just listened to us and let us voice our concerns. And a lot of the agents that we spoke with were just trying to hard sell us on the first call. They were a little bit too aggressive, too confident, and it didn't resonate with us. You actually took the time to ask questions. And so I think that's the number one thing as agents, is we have to stop talking so much and we have to listen. And that's what I think I excel at. Is I'm not a big talker, but I'm a good listener. And I actually active listen to what they're saying. And then I try to take what they said and then figure out a solution for it. So I spoke with a guy on Zoom on Monday. It was an expired. He said, he hired his agent because she had sold some homes in his community. But he said what was really frustrating for him is she didn't communicate. She would never pick up her phone. She would very rarely text him back, which is kind of bizarre. And he said that's the pain point for me, was that I want to make sure who I hire the second time is going to have a good communication plan. And so if I was just talking about how great I was and, "Oh, we sell this many homes and we do this," I wouldn't have actually probably gotten the listing. But because I actually took it one more step and I said, "Well, what was the pain point with your last agent? Okay, so here's what I'm going to do different. I have an assistant. Her name is Marie. First thing I do when we start the transaction is I'm going to start a group thread. So the three of us are going to be on this together. And if I'm tied up an appointment and you have a question or you have a problem, Marie's going to be there to help." And so he loved that because he's like, "Oh, that's great. That's really all I care about, is I just want somebody that, is actually going to be there. I'm in Tennessee and I can't, I just need someone that's going to be able to answer my calls when I need to talk to somebody." So you just have to listen, because I didn't even have to go into like who we were as a team and how many homes we sold. He didn't care about that. He had already done his research. So we didn't even talk about the marketing or anything. It was really about the communication plan and what are we going to do once we take the listing, what happens next. And so we probably spent 15 minutes just talking about that, and he was sold on it. So
yeah, you are really good at active listening, and you repeat what they say. And sometimes, I'm more of like a bulldozer and just getting through it, like, "Okay, let's go." And you sit there, you listen, and then you repeat the last thing they said. So you're saying that communication's the biggest key to you. Is that right? Like, you do that the entire call. I've listened to them and I've listened to you active. So I think Victoria asked, what are some of the questions that you kind of dig into more when you're on these calls? And this is good, not just for expireds or for sale by owners. This is good for just your listing folks when you're pre-qualifying them, asking the right questions to get to the motivation and know if it's a real good appointment to go on. So what things are you asking?
Yeah. So let's say, for example, if I'm calling an expired, usually I go into it. "Hi, this is Emily Brown. I'm a local agent with eXp Realty. Real quick," I usually say, "Real quick, I know you're probably receiving a lot of calls right now. I don't want to take up a lot of your time. I may be interrupting your workday. Just curious, or is the home still available, or have you already, accepted an offer?" And that usually kind of, triggers them a little bit, like, "Well, what do you mean? You have a buyer?" And so then we get into it. And I usually will just ask questions like, "Tell me, what was your experience like on the market?" And they love that question. "Oh my gosh, let me tell you what our experience was." Or, and they usually want to, unfortunately, a lot of times it's just, they want to take a few minutes to just bash their agent. And I don't play into that. I just say, I'm sure your agent did the best they could. Tell me more about your experience. It's really just leaning into what was the experience like. And then that's the time where they can say, well, the communication sucked, or my agent, we felt like they overpriced the home. We didn't like their strategy. We didn't like their pricing strategy. So I allow them a few minutes just to kind of vent, get off their chest, their pain points. And then after that, I'll usually follow up with, well, how many showings did you have during the time the property was on the market? If you had to guess, how many showings? Okay, we had this many showings. Okay, what was the feedback that you received during the time that it was on the market? So just based on what they're telling me, then I'm just digging into it a little bit deeper. And honestly, I'm not talking about myself. They don't care who I am. They don't care how many homes I've sold. I could be a brand new agent. And it's really just asking those questions. And then subconsciously, I think they're like, gosh, this person, there's something about them. I think I would like to meet with them. I didn't say anything. I just asked good questions. And then in doing so, that's how I land the appointment. Very rarely do I ever say, oh, I sold 70 homes. My team were the number one. They don't care about that. They just want to know that someone's there for them. And so it's just asking really good, engaging questions and then trying to get in front of them for the appointment and then continuing down that path. So
once you set the appointment, what do you think is the most important things that you do between the time you hang that phone up and you say, okay, great, I'm going to meet you Thursday at 5 p.m. and actually showing up Thursday at 5 p.m.? Like, do you do anything in between that time frame?
So what I used to do, which for me, I know a lot of agents still do this and I think it's great. I used to deliver a packet of information ahead of time. I've kind of gotten to the point in my business, I don't have time to do that. I could pay someone to go do it, but I don't find that people really take the time to go through our packet of information. I have a template that I use after every single call. I'll send information because they will want to at some point probably just Google your name or research you just to see who you're about. So I send a quick follow-up email. It's great speaking with you. A little bit of information about our team, like 3 sentences, a link to my Zillow profile, a link to our team website, and I think maybe there's a link to our Google reviews as well. And then we have our listing flip book, just a little bit of information. I doubt anybody clicks on that, but I just put it in there just in case, just they see we have some marketing information about us. So I send the follow-up email, and then depending on the situation, I actually will call them back usually prior to the appointment, and I do the Mike Ferry pre-qual script. So just asking them basic questions. If what I say makes sense and you feel comfortable and confident, do you plan on hiring me when we meet at 3 o'clock on Saturday? And it's good. It's kind of awkward to ask those questions, but I want to know. And I try to get as much information as possible so I'm best prepared, run the CMA, and then go from there. So that's kind of what I do.
Do you send like a calendar invite or anything that's like a confirmation of acceptance that you're having this appointment, or you feel like you've talked to them for quite a while, so it's pretty much set?
It's usually pretty much that. So I usually will, after I get off the phone call, so I do send the email and then I'll send them a text with my digital contact card. And then I usually will say, I'm going to reach out to you just to confirm our appointment ahead of time. So if it's Tuesday at 5 o'clock that we're meeting, I will usually text them around Tuesday at noon just to make sure, because I don't want to spend the time, driving out there and then they don't show up. So yeah, I usually will, the day of, will text them and make sure that they're good to go for that time appointment.
Jessica asked, oftentimes agents are tied up on taking the listing regardless of pricing, commission, report, etc. Can you share what are some of your non-negotiables as an agent that you will turn away a seller for business? Is this something that's difficult to do, obviously, is turning down business?
It actually was for me. Even last year, I feel like I was in some cases taking overpriced listings because there's something about just taking a listing. And I know for a team, for us, we get leads from listings, so we get signed calls, we get open house opportunities. So depending on the motivation, we always say if they're really motivated, they have to sell, but they want to overprice their listing a little bit, it's okay to take because they're relocating for a job or whatever the situation is, they're going to have to sell. If there's low motivation, then it's not worth your time. But I have found myself with a lot of expireds, sometimes if they say they want to hire you, but they're not reasonable or rational with their price, it can be hard to turn down. I actually turned one down a couple weeks ago. It was a price point I didn't want to mess in, and it was in an area that wasn't super desirable. And they wanted to hire me, but they wanted to start the price a little bit higher. And he said, okay, well, if we price it high and it doesn't sell, we, went into that whole thing, we will potentially lower it. Potentially is what he said. So I said, I don't think we're going to be a good fit. If you'd like me to, recommend another agent in the area that sells homes in your community, I'd be happy to do it. But I don't think I can, I don't think we're going to be a good team together. So that's really hard to do, but it allows more opportunities for more motivated sellers. So I'm starting to get better at that. But it is really challenging when someone's raising their hand and they want you to list their home, but they're overpriced or not realistic.
That's awesome. Guys, we have been very conscientious of keeping these to 30 minutes. So we have about 10 more minutes. So if anybody has any questions specifically for Emily, can you throw it in the chat box? And we will get those answered. I know that I would love to know, there's kind of two modes of people. The people that come into a listing appointment, they knock on the door, they walk in, and they just have what's in their head and they're ready to kind of go through that appointment. And then there's the people that want to sit down with a book and they want to go through all of the things, right? So what does your model look like on that?
Yeah, so I mean, there's so many different ways to go about it. For me, what has worked for me is I walk in and again, it's all about being in control. So I try to make sure that I'm controlling the appointment and not the seller. So I usually say, well, I typically start off by walking through the home. The Mike Ferry way would be go through the home, don't bring the buyer or excuse me, the seller along with you, but I like to build the rapport there. So I usually go through, I have a notebook in hand and a pen and I'm writing down notes about the property. And it's just a good way for me to build rapport with them. It allows them the opportunity.
like the girls do.
It allows them the opportunity to talk about certain features about the home that they're proud of. So you spend about 10 or 15 minutes doing that, however big the home is. And then I say, I have some information I want to go over with you. Is it okay if we sit at your kitchen table? And then we sit down at the kitchen table. And then that's when I go kind of through the presentation. I don't think I've once opened up our listing packet with information on our team. I always leave it behind, but I don't want them to feel like they're being presented to. There's nothing more in my mind uncomfortable than just sitting there and someone going through a flip book about who we are and our accolades and all that. So again, it goes back to the questions. And the name of the game typically for a lot of sellers is they just want to know the price. So I try to get to that as quickly as possible. But depending on if it's expired or if it's a past client, I kind of tailor the presentation. So I don't know if that really helps, but.
Yeah, I think it helps. Gabe asked what time seems to be the best for making the phone calls. I know you mentioned that you used to do it at 8 and now you do it at 1 and now you do it at 6, kind of like whenever you can, but do you have a time frame?
Honestly, I think the best time to make the calls is the weekends. That's when I have the best conversions for me in my market, at least. Evenings and weekends. Honestly, if I had to pick a time, I would say if you can start calling around like 4:30, you're going to get a lot of people they're done with their workday, they can think clearly. And then on the weekends, people aren't in the office and they have more time to talk. So I usually try to make calls if I can in the morning, Saturday around like 9:30, 10 o'clock, and then even Sunday. So I'd say some of my best conversions have been on the weekends. So I know it's painful to do that for a lot of people, but if you can at least carve out an hour or two on a weekend, I think you'll notice a big difference.
Julia asked, can you repeat what you say when you make the follow-up call before the listing appointment? I made the note that I'll Google and send it out, but it's the Mike Ferry pre-listing questions. So I'm sure we could probably Google that and find it. But what does that conversation look like again?
If what I say makes sense and you feel comfortable and confident that I'm the right agent to sell your home, are you planning to hire me when I meet with you at 2 o'clock on Thursday?
Julia, did that answer your question?
And then basically you're going through like the script is talking about, what do you owe on the home? Have you ever thought about selling it yourself? Like you're asking those.
Yeah, if you I like Mike Ferry. There's so many different coaches out there. If you go to Mike Ferry's website, you can literally download all of his scripts, the expired script, FSBO script, circle prospecting, the listing presentation script. When I was first starting, I literally followed the Mike Ferry listing presentation script. I wrote it out every single day for I think 3 weeks. It would take me like 15 minutes to write out the whole script, but I internalized it that way. So if you're new to listings and you don't really have a script, I would start with something like that. And then you can kind of, as you grow in your listing business, then you can kind of start doing your own thing. But if you're brand new to it and you don't really have a playbook, I would say some kind of a script and then write it out. And so when you go into that appointment, you'll have confidence. And I think that's the number one thing. It's not so much about what you're saying to them, it's about the confidence. They're not probably even listening to you. They're thinking about their next question and what they want to ask. But if you present in a way of confidence, then that's, in my mind, I think that's what's going to get you the listing over someone else.
Victoria wants to know, curious how you tailor these for someone in your sphere or that you have a close relationship with versus an expired that you don't.
Yeah, so there's like this 1 minute listing presentation. So with Mike Ferry, like if you already know that you have the listing, like you're going into it, it's a family member or close friend, and it's a come list me if that's what you're asking. Where it starts off, and I can pull it up real quick. I think it says, hold on a second. It just says, hi, thanks for having me over. I'm excited about getting your home on the market and getting it sold. Do you mind if I take a quick look? Can we go through the house together? And then you say, I wrote down 3 real important questions. Number 1, do you absolutely have to sell your home? Will you price your home to sell or do you want to keep it on the market for a long period of time? And number 3, do you want me to handle the sale for you? And if they say, well, yeah, definitely, that's why we had you come out here. Then you say, okay, well, then all we need to do is simply sign the contract. I think this part's a little phony, so I can help you get what you want in the time you want. Won't that be great?
Yeah.
So,
but I think it's like the point though. You get to the point.
Yeah.
You're already hiring you, so it's like, do you want me to handle all of it? That's what I'm here for, and
Yeah.
I'm going to take the control over.
You
That's
still
good.
want to pre-qualify them to make sure they're in alignment with price and whatnot. And I think that can sometimes be hard when it's a friend. You just kind of want to do what they tell you to do, but I think you still have to have a little bit of a certain level of professionalism too. So
Blake wants to know what are your personal expectation for conversion rate? Say you go on 20 appointments a month, what do you expect to take out of that?
if I'm looking at my last from starting of January 1st this year of all the listing appointments I've been on, I think I've probably missed out on 2. So I'm close to like 90% right now.
And that's for the appointment set. Like once you get in front of them.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're talking about how many are canceling prior to me showing up, or you're talking about after I go on the presentation, how many are converting to actual listings?
How many you take? How many take? Like, if you do 20, how many do you expect to take? Because you get so bummed out when you go, you don't get hired. So like, it's good to have like 50%, 70%.
Yeah,
I think 90.
Right now, if I'm tracking from the beginning of the year, 90, but typically usually around like 80, 85% probably.
And a little bit of that probably has to do with the conversations you're having leading up. It has probably less to do with what's happening when you're in their house and more of what happened from the time you started calling, the time you started prospecting, and the time you set the appointment. Kind of why I asked, like, what do you do from the time you set the appointment to the time you get in the house? And I think that pre-qualifying script with Mike Ferry probably has a lot to do with it because that primed you.
Yep. And it sets you apart because most agents, you have to just think about who am I going up against? What are most people doing and what can I do to be different? So yeah, the pre-qualification, texting ahead of time, sending a follow-up email, that right there, if I was a seller and I had somebody reach out to me 3 times before the appointment, in my head, I'm thinking, wow, this person really, they're on it. They have systems and processes in place. They sent a Google Calendar invite. They sent a follow-up email. They sent me a text when they got off the phone call. They sent me a packet of information. John with Coldwell Banker just did one thing. All I did was set the appointment, then he showed up. So automatically I'm thinking, well, Emily's done these 5 things. These other 3 people have just done this. So that, sets you up for hopefully a slam dunk when you get there. So
last question to kind of end it would be, are you getting them to hand sign paper documents in person? And are you expecting those things to be signed when you walk out the door?
In a perfect world, yeah, you should, honestly, because I've been burned before where I've had clients say, yeah, we're going to hire you. And then I say, okay, I'm just going to email you the paperwork after the fact. And I've been burned that way before. So I would say if you can get it signed at the table, do it. But if I'm being truthful and honest, I usually have them sign it after electronically. I send them an intake form, have them complete that, and then we send them the paperwork after.
Me too. I get it. It just is cleaner and easier and all the things.
It takes a while, but if you're newer and you don't have as much going on and they give you the green light, then I would spend the extra 20 minutes and fill it out with them. Just really depends on where you're at in your business, but yeah.
Hey, Emily, one last thing Tina put in the chat. She said it's called excellent and to go above and beyond. And what did that girl just say to you at your last appointment that wasn't expired?
Oh yeah. She said something about like we were talking about commission and she just said something like I want excellence or something. I told her that what the commission was, and I said it's 6%.
But I'm paying for excellence now.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, don't ever lower. I mean, for me, at least I noticed with a lot of expires, they're willing to pay a little extra for the commission. So the last agent usually gave them a discount, 5%, 5.5%, whatever it is. So yeah, they're usually willing to pay top dollar if
If they want to get their house sold, then
sold. Yeah.
yeah. Well, this was awesome. If anybody has anything, kind of speak now or forever hold your peace. And if not, we will see you next Wednesday at 8:30. Everybody good?
Somebody put in the comments,
Oh,
please
sorry.
address topic of buyer agency compensation.
Oh, I'm so sorry I missed that. Thank you, Miranda.
Yeah, I'm curious about that too.
Okay, really quick, we'll do that if you have time, Emily, for just like 2 minutes. So if you're in a listing appointment and the seller says, okay, well, how does this work with the new NAR? And you say, well, we have to either pre-negotiate the buyer's compensation or these are your options. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, I haven't been getting a lot of pushback on that, honestly. I just explain the way that we handle the situation now. We have to fill out a separate form, what we're compensating the buyer agent. And I say what I typically see in your area is 2.4% or 2.5%. They're usually fine with that. So I do break it up. I don't say our commission is 6%. I say it's 3.6%. And then we just need to decide what you want to pay a buyer broker. And then I say, they kind of look at me like deer in headlights, like, well, what does that mean? So I say, well, the whole NAR lawsuit, we can't advertise what we're paying a buyer broker. So what's happening is a lot of buyer agents are texting me ahead of the appointment, asking what we're compensating. And then we have a form, a 220 form that we send out if they're planning to submit an offer. So I haven't had much pushback on it. I did maybe a couple of times last year when that was all brand new. Now, for me at least, I haven't had anybody say we don't want to compensate a buyer agent or we want to discount the buyer agent fee. So I just explained that it has to be broken up. We can't advertise it. And typically, we want to, what Tina says is we want to employ the buyer's agents to come show your property. So we definitely don't want to decrease or cut their commission. So
what I'm getting a lot right now, and I don't know what's changed, is a lot of them say we're happy to compensate a buyer's agent, but we want to talk about it when the offer's presented. And that keeps happening. And I'm like, I don't know what that script looks like just yet. I haven't really been able to kind of weed through confidently to say, you want to be able to tell the buyer's agent, this is the commission. And the seller says, no, let them bring an offer and we'll negotiate the commission. And so it's hard because it's like.
Ashley, have you run into that?
No, I really, sorry, Cam was
Has
talking.
anybody asked you to say like, we just want to say, bring us a strong offer and we'll decide what we're going to compensate the buyer's agent?
I mean, I've had some that are a little bit lower, but most of them, I just say most of the homes that have sold, our comps in the last 6 months or so might have had compensation. So that's figured into kind of the pricing. So again, like we want to employ all the agents in the market to sell this home. And if they sell 1 to 4 homes a year and they have the option of someone saying they're going to pay compensation down the street or go to new construction and we don't offer it, they may say, we're not going to bring you to that house, or the buyer doesn't want to pay it. So I mean, I just kind of leave it up to them, but I really haven't gotten pushback on it. We've just said, yep, whatever you think, just go ahead and do it.
Cool. Okay, guys. Sorry I missed that one question, Mary. I apologize. I hope this was wonderful for everybody. Emily and Ashley, thank you so much for taking your time. And Anna and Tina, thank you guys. I hope you bundle up and stay warm. We appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you.